Hi, welcome to another interview session that we're doing for our local Time Machine Thursday promotion campaign. Today I have the pleasure to talk to Daniel Jeller, who is not only our Chief Technical Officer at the Time Machine organization, but he's also Head of IT at Icarus, the International Center for Archival Research, and last but not least, primary investigator of the project NAMPI that we're going to talk about. It has a very peculiar acronym. Daniel is going to shed some light on that later on. Yes, and we will talk about this project that recently closed. And maybe let's start at the beginning. Daniel, tell us a little bit about the starting point of your project.
Yeah, well, our project, incidentally, it means nuns and monks, prosopographical interfaces. And that was basically our starting point. We wanted to apply for the Go Digital Next Generation funding scheme at the Austrian University of Science. And for that, we wanted to create a project that combines both technical infrastructural point of view in trying to create a new kind of technology for something that already existed, and at the same time also use this technology that we created to actually create data from available digital sources, not digital, analog sources actually, and make this data available using this technology. So our starting point basically was that we saw there is a certain need for an idea for a paradigm change in how to work with specific kind of historical data, and at the same time, of course, a lack of digitization and making available of specific other data that in itself is also interesting.
Yes, you already touched the subject on a little bit on the data that was available prior to starting the project. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. So what specific data was available? Was it analog? Was it digital? And how did you get the idea to build this database out of the data available?
Yeah, so the name of the project, Nuns and Monks, already has the kind of information that the project data is about in itself. That is, we wanted to create a database on you could say, early modern church personnel, which means basically speaking nuns and monks, but of course not necessarily only, but focused on. And we also try we integrate two kinds of data, one that is already available in a new interpreted form from already existing databases. And at the same time, we wanted to mark up and digitize data, especially about nuns, because that's a bit more rare, from before our project, undigitized primary sources from some monasteries in Austria, basically. Okay. Because we had access to that kind of data, and we thought it would be interesting.
Okay, so what kind of research did you have to undertake, and did you have to engage people to transfer this analog data into the digital? What was the situation like?
Well, our main problems were twofold, and for that we had to find two kinds of persons actually to help. One is, of course, the technical aspect of our specific interpretation of a historical prosopographical database, where we, of course, had to get in touch with the broader scientific community on discussing metadata structure and so on. And on the other hand, of course, we had this primary material where we needed some additional expertise on the things that are actually in this data, because you might think that life in early modern monasteries is not so complicated, but the terms that we have to use, the functions that people had in their communities and so on, have very different, in my opinion, complicated aspects that can be interpreted very differently. And of course, we had to decide on specific interpretations. And for that, yeah, we needed contact to experts on the various fields of historical studies, religion, and so on. Yeah.
Okay, and when we stay on the topic of data, what kind of data format did you choose, and can you tell us why you chose what you did?
Yes, the big idea that we had for our database in the project was that we wanted to move away from the more traditional table-based data storage, where you have, for instance, a column that is for the first name, a column for the family name, and so on. We wanted our information to, on the one hand, be directly traceable to the actual scientists that created this interpretation, because all data that you get from historical sources basically is just an interpretation of available data. Somebody else at a later point that might come to a totally different interpretation because of reading different difficulties like damaged original material and so on. So we needed to trace, on the one hand, this connection to the scientists and to the original sources, and on the other hand, we wanted the actual data that we were extracting from the material, like what kind of office had a specific person in a monastery, or what kind of occupation did they have before they became part of the monastery, and so on. We wanted wanted this data to be comparable to other sources and to other databases. For instance, you have different kinds of administrators in early modern monasteries, and the functionalities are a little bit different depending on which kind of order the monastery belongs to. And you have similar functionalities also in other communities that are non-religious. You also have administrators in Buddhist monasteries. You have administrators in clubs and so on. So we wanted to make it possible to not only look up a specific type of administrator, like the abbot of a Benedictine monastery. We wanted, for instance, to be able to look up all the administrators of various kinds in different monasteries. And to that aim, we decided to move away from the tabular SQL approach and used a fully semantic database with linked data, basically RDF, and an ontology that we created for the general data, and one that we created for these religion-related things in the database. But both are connected.
And in that context, did you meet any specific challenges?
We had many challenges that we sometimes already knew that we will have. The biggest one basically is that it's always difficult to decide on specific interpretations of reality that you want to embed in your database, because you have to pick what kind of thing you want to put in the database, and depending on this interpretation, you have totally different data models, different ontologies that you use. And on the one hand, you're always tempted to try to create some sort of description that applies to the whole world, which of course is not possible. And on the other hand, you have always the danger to describe things in a too narrow sense that makes it difficult at the later point to add additional data, because it doesn't really fit to the thing that you decided on. And from the beginning to the end, we always had the problem, as I guess that other projects has as well, that we saw on the one hand that interpretations that we decided on at an earlier point didn't totally fit new available material. And on the other hand, that new data that we had required additions to the initial data model that we tried to decide on. So it was always a bit of a back and forth between adding things, remodeling things a little bit. But I hope in the end we we solved that to at least to a more or less good degree.
Okay.
But still, after a few months, you are always not satisfied with the data structure you decided on.
It's like an artist whose painting is never finished.
Yes, in my opinion, yes.
All right, we've already come to the end of our interview. Maybe is there anything else that you would like to say or let our community and viewers know?
Yes, of course. Have a look at our page, and I think that the link will be combined with this video. Give us some feedback, and we are always interested in discussions on the actual technologies that we use, because we try to do a little bit. We try to do something more different from the things that we encountered before, and of course that always needs much more discussion with colleagues and other persons that work with the same kind of thing, to see if this approach actually is usable for future databases and future efforts in that area.
Thank you, Daniel, for giving us this quick overview over your project and tackling a few topics. And I hope our community and our viewers follow your invitation to provide some feedback, input, engage in a discussion with you. And I will now just quickly share my screen to show everyone who's not familiar with our local time machine project platform yet, how to reach it and how to specifically find your project, for instance. So you go to timemachine.eu. You go to our menu item, building a time machine, you select local time machine projects. You wait until the page has loaded. Here we go. And you have the landscape. You can either search projects with tags, or in this case, if you want to get in touch with Daniel from NAMPI, you just type in the name of the project, hit enter. And here you go. You get a more detailed view once you click on the name of the project. There's a website available that you can check out. Contact details are available, and just some more detailed information on the project. All right, I'll stop sharing the screen. Once again, Daniel, thank you very much. Let's leave it at that. And
yeah. Thanks
bye-bye.
all. Thanks. Yeah, bye.